Hey guys, in today's video, I'm gonna show you how to build this really cool procedural space HDRI with colorful stars and dust clouds inside Blender. I'll also show you how to wrap it up inside a node group, so you can tweak colors, density, brightness, and much more in seconds, without having to deal with the complex node setup every time. Once it's done, I'll show you how to render it as a 360 image, export it, and bring it straight into Unity so you can use it in your games. Before we start, make sure the Node Wrangler add-on is enabled, because we'll be using it in this tutorial. Okay, first, let's go ahead and delete everything. And I'll go straight into shading, change the viewport shading to rendered. I'll also disable show gizmos and overlays, so we can get a clean view of the star field while working. Let's go into the shade editor, and in this drop down, change the shader type to world. Let's kick things off by making some big and shiny stars. We already have these nodes here, so I'm gonna grab the color input of the background node and drop it somewhere in the workspace. This brings up the search box, where we can quickly find the node we want, and even choose a specific output. I'll search for the Voronoi texture, and select the distance output. I'll increase the scale to 50. Let's drop a map range node here in the middle, so we can adjust the star size. To make this pattern look like stars, the from min value needs to be bigger than the from max value. I also want to be able to adjust both values at once while keeping the distance between them. To do that, I'll add in a value node, connect it into both values, and I'll add a math node between the value node and the from max value. I'll change the type to subtract, and I'll set the second value to 0.05. Now we can use this value to control the size of the stars. I think 0.08 is alright. We can also use the detail of the Voronoi texture to control the amount of stars. Now let's make the stars shine. In the background node, set the strength value to 100 or so. Go to compositing. I'll switch this window here to the 3D viewport so we can see the result we are getting. We also need to enable the compositor. Now in the compositor, enable use nodes, and let's add a glare node right here. Under highlight, lower the threshold to 0.5. I'll set streaks to 6. I think it looks better with 6 streaks, but it's just a personal preference. I'll also set the rotation to 90 degrees. And I think I'm gonna set the quality to high. There we go, it looks good. Now let's add another glare node. But this time I'll change the glare type to fog glow. Set the threshold to 0.15. And set strength to 3. Now let's go back to shading. And we need to enable the compositor here as well. Alright, now let's change the color of the stars. I'm going to use a mix color node to do that. Drop it after the map range node. Set blending mode to multiply. Increase the factor value all the way up to 1. And now the B value will be the color of the stars. Alright, the first layer is finished. Let's just select the Voronoi texture, press Ctrl T, and that will add the mapping and the texture coordinate nodes for us. To keep things organized, I'll select the nodes for the first layer, press F to frame them, and name it Layer 1. To create the next layer of stars, I'll duplicate the Layer 1 and rename it to Layer 2. Then I'll mix both layers using the Lazy Mix shortcut, so hold down Ctrl and Shift, and drag with the right mouse button between both background nodes. That automatically adds a Mix Shader node to combine them. Now we just need to tweak a few settings of the second layer to get a new set of stars. In the mapping node, we can rotate the stars on any axis, just so this layer doesn't stay on top of the other, or we can change the location as well. I'll also change the color of the stars. Now it's easier to differentiate both layers. In the Voronoi texture, I'll set the scale to 70. increase detail to 3.7 to reduce the amount of stars just a bit, and increase the size of the stars a tiny bit as well. I think I'm happy with this result for now, so let's move on to the next layer. I'll duplicate the layer 2, rename it to layer 3. This time I'll mix it with the Mix Shader node. I'll set the Voronoi texture scale to 50. For this layer, I want the stars to be white, so I don't need the Mix Color node. So I'll select it and press Ctrl X to remove it. I'll reduce the amount of stars by raising the detail value of the Voronoi texture. I'll also increase their size and lower the strength of this layer. I'm happy with this layer for now. Now let's fill these gaps with a bunch of tiny stars. So let's duplicate layer 3 and mix it with the others. I'll rename it to layer 4. Mix it with this Mix Shader. Set the scale value to 100 or so. Set the size of the stars to 0.07. Set detail to 0. And lower the strength to 5. Now let's create the last layer of stars, which will have even smaller stars. Duplicate layer 4. Rename it to layer 5. Mix it with the others. I'll set the scale to 200 and the strength to 8. And these are the only changes we need for this layer. You might have noticed that each time we add a new Mix Shader, the previous layers get dimmer. If I remove layer 5, for example, the stars in the other layers become brighter again. This happens because every Mix Shader blends 50% of the new layer with 50% of the result we already have. But we need the Mix Shaders to control each layer's strength individually and to give the stars different colors. To fix the dimming, we just need to adjust the strength of each layer. But we can do this after we add the dust, which is the next step. For the dust, we are going to need a noise texture, a background node, and a Mix Shader. So I'll duplicate this Mix Shader and drop it here. Connect the factor of the noise texture into the factor of the Mix Shader and the background node into the second shader input. I'll connect the factor of the noise texture into the background's color as well. Now I'll add in a map range node and drop it here between the noise texture and the background nodes. And now we can use these values to control the spread of the dust. I'll increase the from min value to create the dust clouds. We can also increase the detail of the noise texture all the way up to 15, so it will look more like clouds. I'll lower the scale to make the clouds a bit bigger. Let's also increase the to min value just a bit, so the other areas get a bit dusty as well. And we can increase the from max value to make the dust clouds a bit weaker and more natural. I'll also add a math node after the map range node. Set it to multiply. And now we can use this value to adjust the overall dust intensity. Now let's give colors to the dust. I'll add in another noise texture. We'll also need a Mix Color node. I'll drop it between the math and the background nodes. The value of the math node goes into the factor, and the color of the noise texture goes into the B color. The A color will be the predominant color of the dust. And with the B value, we can create some color variation to make the result more interesting. So I'll add a color ramp between the noise texture and the Mix Color nodes. I'll add more color stops to the color ramp. And for each one, I'll choose a different color. So this one will be green. This one red. This one is blue. This one a blue-green. And this last one is purple. Let's adjust the position of the color stops to see if we can get a better result. I'll also switch the interpolation over to B-spline to make the transition between the color stops a bit smoother. Okay, it doesn't look bad, but there's still one more step to make it look even better. Now I want to be able to fade or even hide the dust and stars in certain areas of our space. It's very easy to do. We just need another mix shader node, so I'll duplicate this one. The factor will be the factor of this noise texture. And I'll add an invert color node here in the middle. And now a map range node after the invert color. For the second shader, I'll add a background node. And its color will be the space color. So I'm going to choose a dark blue. Now we can use the 2max value to reduce the density of the dust and stars in certain areas. We can use the from min value to control the range of this area. And when we set the from max value closer to the from min value, the transition between these areas gets sharper. It's always good to check different parts of the material to see how it looks overall. I think we need to increase the strength of the layers, but it will be easier after we create a node group. Okay, now let's frame the dust nodes. I will not include the background node because it's the space color. Okay, the material is basically this. Now let's go ahead and create a node group for this material, just to make it easier to be customized. I'll select all nodes except material output. Then press Ctrl G to group them. I'll drag the group input node closer to layer 1. Now I'll choose the inputs that I want to use to customize the material. The first input I want to add is the star color. Here in the world properties, we can see the inputs that we are adding. I'll press N to bring out this menu. And in the group sockets, you can double click on the input to rename it. So this one is layer 1 star color. Now I'll add the star size input. This value right here. I'll merge the two connections coming from the value node. Then drag a new input from the group node and connect it to this dot to replace the value node. We need to adjust the value here in the input. And now we can delete the value node. I'll rename it to layer 1 star size. I'll also add the layer strength and the noise texture detail that we use to control the stars amount. I'll rename the inputs. Now I'll increase the strength of layer 1 because I want the blue stars shinier. Let's try 200. Alright, let's also increase the size of them. There we go, I think it looks better this way. For the second layer, instead of using the same group input node, I'll duplicate it, place it closer to layer 2, and plug the layer 2 inputs into this one. And as you can see, the input was added normally. I could use the same group input, it works the same way, I just think it's more organized this way. Okay, for all the layers we basically use the same inputs, so I'll finish them real quick and we can jump straight to the dust frame. Alright, I've added the inputs for all the star layers, and I've also increased their brightness. Now it's a good time to mention that this project will be available for free on my website artisticasset.com. Since you're still watching the video, I think you deserve it. But I highly recommend staying to the end because I'll also show how to customize the dust, render the HDRI, and import it into Unity. Okay, so now let's add the dust inputs into the group input. I'll add in another group input node and place it closer to the dust frame. From this noise texture, I'll add the scale input, which is the dust scale. From this map range node, I'll add the from min value, which we can use to adjust the size of the denser part of the dust. The from max value controls the intensity of that same area. And with the to min value, we can adjust the dust in general, not only the denser areas. So let's add these inputs. I'll also add the math node value, that is the dust intensity. With the A value of this mix color, we can change the overall dust color. So let's add it as well. Now let's add the inputs of this map range node, which controls this darker area of the space. So from min, for instance, controls the range of this darker area. From max controls the transition between the dust and the darker area. So let's go ahead and add all inputs of this map range node, so we can have full control over this area. I'll also add this background node color, which is the space color. Okay, that's it for the node group. Now I'll rename the new inputs and then come back to render the HDRI. After I finished the tutorial, I realized that some of you might not want this color variation effect. So I created a setup that allows turning the color variation on and off. So let's go to the dust layer. In the noise texture that is connected to the color ramp, I'll add a mix color node from the factor output. I'll set the blending mode to multiply, turn the factor all the way up to 1, and connect the dust color input to the B color. If you don't know how to create this reroute, you just need to hold down Shift and drag with the right mouse button across the connection. Okay, now I'll add in another mix color node. The result of this one goes into the A value, and the result of this one goes into the B value. Now I'll connect the new one into the background node color. With this factor value, we can control how much of the color variation we want. At 0, we get the full color variation effect, and at 1, there's no color variation at all. Right now the dust looks faded because the dust and space colors are almost the same. Let me change the dust color so we can see how it looks like. And there we go. Now we have one more way to customize our material. Now we just need to add a color variation factor to the group input node as well. Alright, now I'll show you how to render the HDRI. Okay, I've already renamed the inputs, so now we can set up our scene for rendering. So we need to add a new camera. Press numpad 0 to go to the camera view. I'll go to the render properties panel. Switch render engine over to cycles. I'll change the device to GPU compute to render the scene faster. I'll also go to sampling, render, and reduce max samples to 400. Now go to the noise, it should be enabled. And I'll also enable use GPU. Now go to the camera properties, set lens type to panoramic, and panoramic type to equirectangular. This simulates capturing the full environment like an HDRI. Now go to the output properties so we can adjust the resolution. The resolution should have a 2:1 aspect ratio. So if we want to make the X resolution 14,000 for example, the Y resolution should be 7,000. And of course, the higher the resolution, the better the final result will look. Now we just need to hit F12 to render. You will notice that the image is distorted, but that's completely normal. This is just how any HDRI image looks like. To save the image, click on Image, Save As. Choose the file format that can be OpenEXR or Radiance HDR. EXR is better for cleaner and more accurate HDRIs, but the file is much heavier. In my experience, Radiance HDR works just fine and the file size is way smaller. After you choose the file format, you just need to choose the folder where you want to save your file, give it a name, and hit Save as Image. So now let me show you how to import our HDRI into a Blender scene. I'll change the viewport shading to rendered, go to the world properties. In the color field, click here on this yellow dot and choose Environment Texture. Now click on Open and find the HDRI file in the file browser. Double click, and it's done. Now let's import it into Unity. So here I have an empty Unity project. Now I'll drag and drop the rendered file into the asset folder. Select the file, and in the inspector window, set texture shape to cube, mapping to latitude longitude layout, and alpha source to none. Now just hit apply. Once it's finished, just drag and drop the file into your scene and it's done. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching and see you in the next one.